Welcome to Terror in Tandem's Octerrorfest. All month long, we will be celebrating the horrifying delights of the spookiest month, October. Prepare yourself for episodes that frighten and delighten your spine as we chill you to the bone. You can find us on YouTube and Instagram at Terror in Tandem, and you will always find our latest episodes at terrorintandem.com.
It's true.
Welcome.
So sonorous.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
It's from the depths of hell.
Oh, yes, it is. Welcome.
So, yeah, another Octerrorfest month, weekly episode.
Yes.
You guys are just getting blasted.
With all
terror.
Over. Sprayed with fear.
We're smashing those Octerrors.
Just like you're smashing those subscribe buttons.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Subscribe. Smash that button.
Smash it.
Like and subscribe.
Give it a good
all
old...
platforms. Listen, here's a little PSA.
We welcome all platforms here at Terror in Tandem.
Multiple platforms.
Oh,
what? If you have Spotify, Apple, other streamers, YouTube, we would love for you to subscribe to all of those mediums.
Are you telling me I can subscribe to the same podcast on multiple different mediums?
You can.
This is news. No, I already did that like the first day.
Yeah, it would be great, you guys.
Our first 3 subscribers were me.
Right, I know.
But yeah, stab that button. Enough of that shit. Let's get into the good stuff. Hello, welcome, fellow co-host. Welcome. That went well.
Come.
Yes. So how are you doing today? How's October going so far in your opinion?
It's great. The weather's great. Everything about it's great.
For those of you that don't live in hurricane disaster zones.
Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, the weather has been kind of nice, but we won't brag about that. Stay safe. Don't watch Crawl if you live in Florida. It's just not the right time.
Yeah. But maybe this is if you're leaving an evacuation and you're in a hotel and you need something to occupy your time, listen to this episode.
Yeah, slightly less scary. So today we are doing something
we're starting special. A new series.
A new series. Oh my gosh, folks. It's happening. It's really happening.
Yeah. I mean, why this wasn't a series to begin with, we'll never know.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. It's just that the phone lines are exploding.
But
our intern has left. She is beside herself.
This is much like we do our Make Remakes, our International. This is going to be a new series called Classic Horror Films.
A deep dive.
Exactly.
Presented by Terror in Tandem. Presents.
In parentheses, yes, that Terror in Tandem. And parentheses.
A TNT joint. So, yeah, we're going to be doing...
Asterisk, not to be confused with Terror in Tandem.
So we're going to be picking one movie and getting real into it for as long as we feel like. Yeah. And then stopping. That's kind of how this works.
Yeah, I mean, or you can stop at any time.
But...
don't stop subscribing.
Don't, because we'll know. We actually have a track. We know exactly when people hit the 15-second button.
Yeah, I mean, I know. Most of you have your location services turned on. So when you're traveling to Syracuse for work, I know you're downloading our episodes.
So look outside, and there we are, folks. Hi.
It's all for you.
It's all for you. I love you. Speaking of which, The Omen, 1976.
Yeah, that's why I said it's all for you.
I know. And that's why I said I love you, because she says that too.
Oh, she does?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I will admit that this is the first time I've ever seen it.
And
I just watched it for the first time just to prepare for this episode.
So many times I've seen this.
But it was accessible, easily accessible, everyone. If you have Hulu, you can watch it for free.
Nice. Or, however much it costs to subscribe to Hulu, which is not free. But you had never seen The Omen, so I'm assuming you've never seen The Omen 2?
No.
How about The Omen 3, The Final Conflict?
No.
Or the made-for-TV Omen 4?
No.
How about the remake, 2006, with Liev Schreiber?
No, but I do know that the kid actor does make an appearance in that film.
He does. And also, so I'm guessing you didn't go with me this year in the theater to see the first Omen, because I don't remember you being there with me.
Because this is really technically the first Omen.
It is. Welcome to the club. There's never a bad time to watch what is absolutely one of the greatest horror movies ever filmed.
That's why we're doing this classic horror, and The Omen is the first one. So, yeah, let me talk a little bit about the makeup of it.
And it's pretty cool that you're going to get it from the perspective of someone who's just now seen it once, and someone the first time I watched it, I think I was like 13. So, yeah.
Wow. So, as Richard mentioned, it came out in 1976. It's one of the highest grossing films in 1976. It made more than $60 million off of a $3 million budget.
I mean,
especially in 1976.
Yeah.
For a horror movie.
I mean, it's not Megalopolis money, but it's doing pretty well.
It earned 10 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Actor, and Best Director. Speaking of director, it was directed by Richard Donner, who went on to direct Superman, The Toy, The Goonies, and Lethal Weapons.
All the Lethal Weapons. Yeah. He didn't really do a horror after this, except for 3 episodes of Tales from the Crypt. Most notably that one, if you've ever seen it, it really stands out. The ventriloquist one with Don Rickles and Bobcat Goldthwait, and Don Rickles wrote it. It's wild.
Yeah, nobody really did a horror after this. Not many of the people involved.
Understandable.
We'll get into it. So it was written by David Seltzer.
Yes.
Inventor of seltzer.
Oh, well known. From the Schweppes family?
No. Who he published a book with the same title 2 weeks before the film as a marketing gimmick.
Yeah.
Which it happens now more than it did in the 70s, which was interesting.
He did this a few times. He also novelized his 1979 film Prophecy. David Seltzer. So here's the thing about David Seltzer. He wrote The Omen, which is, as we said, one of the greatest horror movies ever made. And then he wrote Prophecy, which is about a mutant bear in the woods chasing after people. And then he wrote Bird on a Wire, which is maybe the scariest movie he's ever written.
Well, that's not very good, but he did also write Lucas, which is one of my favorite 80s nostalgia movies.
Listen, if you want to watch an 85-pound Corey Haim get thrown through a bandstand during a football game, that's the movie for you.
Oh, it's so sweet.
It's
and
adorable.
Sad, and that movie is
lovely.
A delight.
Hilarious.
It's starring Gregory Peck from Roman Holiday, How the West Was Won, and Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird.
In terms of horror, I mean, he was in both Cape's Fear, the original and the remake. The remake's more horror than the original, but...
And then there was another remake.
Of Cape Fear? No. There was the one with him and Robert Mitchum, and then there was the one with Robert De Niro that Scorsese directed.
I thought there was another one made in the 90s.
Oh, that was the one that made in the 90s with Nolte.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Scorsese remade it. And it was a bit more horror focused, but yeah.
I like when Seinfeld does Uncle Leo doing pull-ups with knuckle tattoos that say Jerry on one hand and hello on the other, and he is wearing the tank top and doing the pull-ups and being like, Jerry.
So funny bit of trivia.
Hello.
Max Cady, the character that, in the 1990 version of Cape Fear, Robert De Niro had love and hate tattooed across his fingers, but that's not in the original Cape Fear. That's from another villain that Robert Mitchum played in Charles Laughton's Night of the Hunter, where he played this like really creepy preacher, and he had love and hate tattooed across his fingers, and his explanation in the movie was because he would like put his hands together in like a fist, and he'd say like, because love and hate are always worn with each other. So when Scorsese remade the movie, he kind of combined elements of 2 Robert Mitchum villains that Robert De Niro then played off of.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Were those tattoos Robert Mitchum had real?
No, they were as actors often do in movies, makeup. Ooh, this has been tangent talk.
Anyway, Gregory Peck plays Robert Thorne, and then Lee Remick is his wife from Anatomy of a Murder, Days of Wine and Roses.
Oh, Days of Wine and Roses is it's one of my favorite Jack Lemmon dramatic movies. It's just a heartbreaker.
Yeah, she was never really in horror after this, prior to or after this.
Yes.
And she played Catherine or Kathy. I mean, Robert Thorne's Gregory Peck's breathy calling out to Kathy all the time.
Yes.
Oh, Kathy.
Yeah. She's
Kathy.
amazing in this movie. She does an incredible job. And, poor Lee Remick, she went through a lot. They all did.
Yeah.
This was a tough one.
And then Harvey Stevens as young Damien. Really well cast. He has a very sinister but also sweet look to him.
Yeah. The like poster child for bad seed is Damien. And unfortunately the actor playing him has had a bit of a rough go in life. He didn't really do much after that.
He went missing for a while, like from the public eye, I should say.
Yeah. I mean, he was arrested in 2017 on Friday the 13th for jumping out of his car and beating 2 cyclists. I think one of them unconscious. So, yeah.
So, this film, the reason it was made...
Now, let's not forget a second here. Let's not forget sleazy photographer journalist David Warner from Tron and Straw Dogs and all sorts of cool shit.
Do you think he was sleazy? Because I didn't pick up on that.
I am absolutely going to make an argument that he was sleazy. Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, he's the one that really uncovered the prescient of the killings.
Yeah, but there's also the moment where he uses the... distraction of screaming traumatized children to sneak photos of the ambassador, and he kind of stalks him. And there's definitely 2 sides to this guy.
I understand. He does risk his life to help him, though.
Well, I mean, he loses his life.
Yeah.
And his head.
So this film was made to most likely capitalize on the success of The Exorcist that came out a few years before.
As the mid to late 70s, there are so many devil movies, and most of them are kind of shit. Yeah.
And just to level set as far as what this film is about, it begins in a hospital where a distraught father, Robert Thorne, played by Gregory Peck, as we've already mentioned, is grief-stricken, having lost his newborn child to stillbirth. And he's talking to a priest who has an offer to make him about a baby born by a mother who died in childbirth. And he can take the baby and claim as his own and never tell your wife. And so he does.
Classic male problem solving from the 70s.
And he never, spoiler alert, he never cops to it.
Nope.
Never once to his wife, even in her worst throes of psychological turmoil.
Yeah, don't worry. The demon kid didn't come from you.
He never, ever tells her.
That would have been a neat thing to say, I think.
Yeah.
At some point, like, you're not responsible for birthing the spawn of Satan.
And so on his 5th birthday, Damien's true birthright as the Antichrist starts.
Oh, yes.
It's more of a psychological horror for the majority of the film. And I want to talk about the score specifically.
The Academy Award-winning score?
Yeah.
By Jerry Goldsmith?
Jerry Goldsmith. So the score in itself is its own character.
It is extraordinary.
It causes the fear and the tension of the movie. I don't think that if you had another score, or if you look sometimes when they show on the old TikTok machine retellings of trailers as romantic comedies with different sound and score put over it. If this score had been done any differently, it would not have been as scary of a film.
I actually did a little experiment there. I rewatched the baboon animal attack scene 2 ways. One with the sound on and one mute to test that out. And what I found was it's still impeccably directed, because Richard Donner was, a masterful director, especially in terms of like tension. Mm-hmm. But without the score, I mean, the music in that scene especially gives you such a sense of wrongness as these baboons are freaking out. And the music is what lets you tell them that they're freaking out for a reason. Like there's something evil happening.
Scene, and then the cemetery scene.
Yes.
Those 2 scenes are probably the most frightening. And inducing, and then the dog attack.
I just want to throw it out there. Good on Jerry Goldsmith for winning an Academy Award for a song named Ave Satani.
Yeah.
Hail Satan, everybody.
So Jerry Goldsmith's score instructs the viewer where to feel the fear. And it has this beautiful, eerie quality of the Latin chanting.
A bit of Rosemary's Baby.
Ominous, repetitive themes. Yeah. And it's hard to block the sound out because it's always sort of vibrating at a low frequency.
There are two styles to Jerry Goldsmith's score that I noticed throughout the movie. There's what you just mentioned, the kind of big, bombastic, gothic, Catholic style, like Ave Satani, which is, has like, that baritone section and operatic voices, and it sounds like something that would come out of the Vatican during like a religious crisis or whatever. And then you have this subtle tension building music that just makes you it's a lot more understated, and it plays to the action, but put together it makes you feel so uneasy, even in moments of where you might not feel uneasy.
Yes, if there was a different track or a different tone.
There's a lot in this movie
leaves that tone of the nightmare. Like it's always the same.
Oh my God, you're so right.
It's not at all, the only time that maybe it's a little light is when they do that photo montage of Damien's childhood up until 5.
Even the birthday party before everything goes horribly, it still looks kind of scary.
Yeah.
There's always an element.
The kid's in a 5-piece suit.
Yes. There's always an element around even the normal things that happen in this movie that make it seem like it's not real, like it's weird, like there's something wrong. Something from the moment they switch babies in the hospital, his life is doomed.
Yeah.
Robert Thorne. And in later movies, and especially in the prequel, they explore a little bit more that this family was very specifically chosen, and that there really was no possibility that they would ever escape this fate.
Well, we see it at the end because the poem that was recited throughout the movie, first by the priest and second by Gregory Peck.
Yeah.
The Antichrist coming and destroying Earth is a political child.
Yes.
A child from politics. And so the end scene of the film, we see that perpetuating. And because he is now being cared for under the care of the United States president. I mean, we don't see their faces,
yes,
but we know that it's the president
of
the United States.
This part
and his
of
wife,
the
holding
book,
Damien's hand at the end, and he turns and looks at the viewer.
This part of the Book of Revelation, which is where all this bullshit comes from. First off, it was written by a guy on mushrooms. Anyone who's ever taken mushrooms and read the Book of Revelation has gone, oh yeah, sure, absolutely. That's familiar. So take that for what you will. But in the Book of Revelation, so they talk about the Antichrist being a public figure of some sort, like a politician or, like someone that people flock to with charisma.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, well, that's what the Dead Zone played off of so well.
Yes. And, ever since Ronald Reagan, you hear that from in politics, like, they're the devil, they're the Antichrist, blah, 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 because, somebody high on mushrooms 1900 years ago wrote about it, I guess. So that does come up a lot.
So the best part of the story of Damien is its inevitability, because
yes,
no matter what they do, no matter how they try to intervene or change the outcome, Robert is told basically what's going to happen and how to prevent it, and he still tries to avoid doing that. And it still becomes inevitable. So,
even, at the very end, well, you know what? Let's get to that.
Well, it doesn't take it takes the choice of the characters totally out of relevance.
Yeah.
No matter what they do or choices they make,
that's the
inevitability of Damien being the Antichrist and unleashing his evil onto the world happens no matter what they do.
I think that's the secret sauce behind this movie that elevates it from, ooh, that was kind of scary, to, oh my God, that's going to stick with me forever, there's a huge dose of cosmic horror in here. A little bit of H.P. Lovecraft by way of the Catholic Church, meaning like, what you just mentioned about the inevitability of it, that these people, even though they're famous and wealthy and have, power and influence, they are helpless in the face of forces that are ageless and enormous and so far beyond our understanding that it just drives you insane to even think about it, but with all the Catholic imagery and like the secret knives, the secret poems, the hidden prophecies, all that shit.
Yeah. How you have to go speak to one particular person in a remote
and that all just turns out to
location.
be like a MacGuffin, because the fact of it is, folks, if God or the devil picks you out to do something, it's probably going to happen.
Yeah, there was one problem I did have with it in the cemetery scene when he opens the child grave and there's like it's a baby. It's supposed to be a stillborn baby.
Yeah.
That skeleton is like a skeleton of a 10-year-old.
Yeah. Too big. Too many bones. It was a big bone baby.
But
Triple B.
I would say that the relationship between Kathy and Robert being so loving and supportive, and as I mentioned, that beautiful passage of time in Damien's first years with the time they spent together and, having fun and loving each other was so beautiful. It almost made, I think I said to you while I watched it that I felt really sad for Damien.
You did.
Like, I felt bad for him.
It kind of mirrors in a way the story of Jesus Christ according to the Bible, in that you read a lot about his birth, and then you read about the part when he was 13 and he discovered that he was, the Son of God, but nothing in between.
Yeah,
so you have to imagine that those years were probably just kind of normal, like raising a kid.
They create this, I guess, hopefulness or illusion that maybe this Antichrist can be loved enough out of evil.
But they also gloss over those years in a pretty quick montage of
right.
Don't worry about it. Nothing really they're happy, yeah, sure, but that's inconsequential.
It was filmed in Rome and London, and so that adds this, regal background.
I can't believe they made this for only $3 million.
I know, and sort of a regal background to an end of the world as we know it story.
Yeah.
It gives a real sense of grandeur and what will be lost. And when Kathy starts to realize Damien's not her child, and Robert is essentially stalked by Father Brennan, warning him and instructing him to kill Damien, things really fall apart for the family. Like on a very basic level of their marriage, her psychology, his perpetuation of the lie.
That's the thing about evil is it doesn't necessarily just show up in a bulldozer knocking your front door down. It poisons. It's insidious. It creeps in and it destroys things from the inside.
Yeah.
So, it also divides and conquers. So it makes people go crazy. It makes people hate each other and fight each other instead of banding together to fight the evil as an ally. It makes you weak.
When Kathy gets pregnant and she wants an abortion, which is, I was shocked that in 1976 they're so openly discussing abortion.
Well, rich people can do that. Also, they were in England.
Yeah. And her therapist essentially was like, you need to let her have an abortion. Not much has changed there. And he refuses, even though he's been carrying this lie that Damien is not their child, that he knows she now feels that he's not right. There's something wrong with him. She can't even look at him. And so much so that she doesn't want to bring another child.
I feel like that would have been a
world.
great time for him to go, oh, yeah, but don't worry, because Damien's not really yours. This one will probably be fine.
Or when she was really in the throes of a mental breakdown, saying, listen, let's get you the help you need, but I want to tell you something.
I'm pretty sure it's an episode of Joe Rogan called, Fellas, is it gay to tell your wife that you switched their babies at birth?
So, we want to talk about the ending a little bit?
I do. So, everything falls apart. It crescendos to this really amazing ending where, a wounded Gregory Peck is dragging the kid to the church, being chased by the coppers, and he's going to stab him with these knives. And when he opens the door to this cathedral-like church, he has Damien under one arm, and he's just hauling him like a bundle of firewood. Like, this kid's screaming and crying, and he's just hauling this kid like he really doesn't see him as a child.
Well, after he cuts his hair pretty aggressively to find that 666 symbol.
He does, like, at this point,
the devil sleeps well, I'll tell you that.
He no longer sees the child as human.
Right.
So, and then they get to the altar, and the kid goes away, and he grabs him by the arm, and he drags him bodily across the altar, like a 5-year-old,
yep.
you know? And he's holding him down. He does have a moment because he's a human being about to plunge a knife into
a child
who's going, "Daddy, please don't." But
no, Daddy.
When the coppers shoot him, he's on the downswing.
Yeah,
he is definitely going to kill this thing.
Yep.
And I thought Gregory Peck's, I mean, just this is what you get when you cast a world-class actor. His body language as he's dragging the kid in really portrayed this sense of like disgust that he's holding this like wriggling monster in his arms, you know, but he's got to get it done. He's walking with this like determination. I also think it's disgust with
himself though, because it's all his fault that his wife is dead.
He deeply knows it by the end of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, he's distraught, and then he has to save the world essentially, and kill this kid, and he doesn't have any feelings for him anymore.
Just like always,
or any feelings for anything.
God, the cops show up when they do to make things all better by saving the Antichrist and dooming the world, at least until the third movie.
And then cut to the funeral of Kathy and Robert being lowered into the ground.
Together. It's a double funeral. Those are always double the fun. And
Damien's the only face we see turn.
But he is being held at that moment by the President of the United States. Because I don't know if we ever mentioned this, but Robert Thorne is an ambassador to England.
Well, yeah, she talks a lot about him being the future president of the United States. Yeah, I mean,
he is.
He's in position to become the president.
That's why they were chosen.
Yeah.
So, you know, their kid is going to grow up surrounded by the elite.
Yep.
And the power, the movers and shakers of America. We've got all the nukes.
So that's it. That's the Damien of it all.
The long and short of this franchise is it's actually pretty solid. The first movie is far and away the best. It's just a top 5 of all time. Damien, the Omen 2 is really good. It's got William Holden in it, so it continues that streak. The third movie, The Final Conflict, I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag. Sam Neill is great, but I thought the way that it ended was a real bummer. And then the made-for-TV fourth movie is garbage. The remake is just sort of like, why? And the first Omen, Arkasha Stevens' prequel that came out this year, is fantastic. So if you're only going to watch a few of them, I'd say the first 2 and then the prequel. The prequel also fills in a lot of neat stuff, but it doesn't get so concerned with continuity that you're like, well, what the fuck?
I mean, this movie was pretty well, ended. Well done. Everything about it was put together like smartly and meaningfully.
Oh, it's a AAA Hollywood blockbuster. It's like at a time, I think The Exorcist really changed things where they were like, look, a horror movie can be critically loved and make money. So studios were now like, well, what happens if we stop treating this genre like it's something we're ashamed of?
Yeah. Well, Richard Donner had a really hard time getting this movie made. He said most of the studios turned it down because it was under the guise of a horror film. And he was forced to pivot and make it less of a horror film and more of a mystery suspense thriller. And then it was able to be made. And that's likely why it got all the Academy Awards, because horror doesn't typically get nominated, especially as we've continued on.
Looking at you, Hereditary, which should have won everything.
Midsommar.
Oh, what the fuck?
But I mean, Silence of the Lambs, I think, is the last time we really saw the Academy recognize horror.
Yeah, whoever wins is whoever the Weinsteins have been threatening the most, I guess.
Well, hopefully they're not involved anymore. But I do think that this is a a upper echelon horror film.
Oh, yeah. This is the one that you show your friends who are snooty about horror movies.
Yeah, this is about, honestly, maybe it is about directing and cinematography and acting and things like that. But above and beyond everything else, it is about how to score a movie, how to score a horror movie.
How to direct and cut a movie. I mean, Richard Donner's direction is, I think the reason this movie has a different feel than a lot of other horror movies is because he's not a horror director. He was primarily an action and thriller director. He made amazing, awesome action movies. And it's that skill set that really set him aside. But why don't we take a break and then we can get a little bit more into that and some of the spooky goings on.
Yeah,
This is legit one of the most cursed
urban
movies
legends,
ever made.
yeah.
Not even urban legends, like real shit that happened. Ah!
Looking to add a bit more fright to your neighborhood trick-or-treating? Tired of those pesky neighbors with their obnoxious kids? Well, be the pioneer of your town's Halloween nightmares and head down to Helen's Halloween Candy Shop, where you can get all the noxious, poisonous, and downright criminal candy out there. Putting the trick back into trick-or-treats, Helen's Halloween Candy provides only the best chocolate delights, filled with your choice of razor blades, rusty nails, or thumbtacks. Looking for something less obvious? Try our line of cyanide-laced sour gummies and pixie sticks, sure to get those kids frothing. At Helen's, we even have ant poison dog biscuits, so even the family dog can get in on the action. Whatever your sick desire, we have a treat for you. With our discreet customer transactions, you can be assured full anonymity. So come on down today, where every day is Halloween. This is a fake ad for a fake product on a horror-themed podcast. We do not condone nor endorse trying to poison or murder children.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Huzzah. So yeah, I guess just sort of continuing on, like talking about Richard Donner and the direction, from an action director's point of view and perspective, he crafts these really, really tight sequences. And I want to point one out in particular. It's maybe one of the most famous parts of the movie, and I think it transcends the movie. I think a lot of people that have never seen The Omen know this part. It's the birthday party when the nanny, it's all for you. So in this sequence, you've got this very expensive, lavish outdoor birthday party happening at this fucking
for a 5-year-old
castle that they live in for a 5-year-old. So there's a carousel, and
people there even remark on its opulence.
Yes,
and like the photographer, actually, creepy photographer, is like,
well,
who's this all for, huh?
Yeah, he's the only one who's like a working class guy, because the other guests are dignitaries. There's a guy like a general, it's all the creme de la creme of high society, and they're,
political society.
Exactly. Political society, especially. So you've got a little makeshift roller coaster, a carousel, performers, all this crazy stuff, balloons. It's like a carnival, right? So in the middle of all of that, the nanny's walking by, and she locks eyes with this Rottweiler, which is a hellhound. Mm-hmm. And it
just comes from out of nowhere.
Hypnotizes her.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sequence, you can see their eyes locking, and you see the glint of the sun in the Rottweiler's eyes. It's perfect, right in the corner of its eye. That shine kind of makes it seem like it's doing something. And then her face goes slack, and the next thing is you see the kids playing, and you just hear in the background of all the cacophony of this party, you just hear, "Up here, Damien."
But before that, can I just say something happens pretty significant before that? The nanny is very much in charge of Damien.
Yes.
And is holding him and, trying to get him to smile for the camera. And Kathy, the mom, sees this happening and takes Damien from the nanny.
Yes.
So she kind of sees something strange happening. She doesn't like what she's seeing. No. And she goes and takes her son.
And she is not the first nanny to come and be weird.
Right.
The next one is
the other one's not so much of a nanny as a
like chosen au pair
Another
of hell.
hellhound,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
human hellhound.
Yeah. The next one's worse. But so amidst, the party, you're not focused on the nanny. You're focused on the kids. The camera is focused on the kids, on Gregory Peck. Everyone having a good time. And in the background, you just sort of clock that you hear another voice going, "Up here, Damien, look at me. Look at me, Damien. I love you." And like the audience, it takes a second. Like the kids in the at the party, it takes you a second. But then he shows them looking, and then there's a nanny. She's standing, on the right outside a window at the top of this building, and there's a noose around her neck, and she just says, "It's all for you," and jumps. Like it happens very quickly.
Yeah.
She doesn't linger. She doesn't make a big deal. She just steps right
Happily.
off. Yep. Smile on her face. The rope goes taut. Her neck breaks, and she smashes through the window. There's a brief shot then of a maid inside the room screaming as this body comes into the window, but it's still on the rope. So then it just hangs there. And then it goes to the kids screaming and crying. But then there's a shot, of Lee Remick looking up in horror and the adults looking up in horror and trying to shield their kids. But then there's this magnificent shot of a group of kids staring at this thing with no expression at all on their face. And you're thinking, what?
They're not crying. They're not screaming.
And you realize
it's sort
they're
of shocked.
traumatized.
Yeah,
they're absolutely traumatized, but they don't look shocked. They just look blank.
And it's so quiet.
It's very creepy.
Nobody rushes in.
It's, parents start
to their kids.
Grabbing their
they rush
own
to
kids.
their kids, but they don't rush in to help the nanny.
No, it takes Gregory Peck being like, "Get her down,"
Yeah.
be like, "Hey, there's a fucking dead woman hanging at my kid's birthday party."
And they're like, Kathy protects Damien and hides his face.
But it's a 2-minute sequence from dog hypnotizing to everything going to shit is 2 minutes, and it is breathtaking.
And then, so they're hiding Damien's face from the nanny on the news. Both of them.
It ends with a shot of Damien's face,
not turned away from the nanny, looking at the dog. And doing just a gratitude wave.
A little wave. And in that moment, you're like, well, is that a 5-year-old waving at a doggy? Or is it the Antichrist going, "Cheers.
Yeah.
That was cool. Thanks for the present.
We're here for you, buddy."
Yeah. And
we got her out of the way.
That is another thing I want to talk about in this movie, that one of the strengths is you really are left guessing throughout the movie about Damien himself. Now, he's obviously the Antichrist. He's obviously been placed there. But is he a kid who's being manipulated just like everybody else is being manipulated? Or is he himself evil? And the actor, the way it's shot, the choice to linger on Damien's face in certain moments, and these childish behaviors that kind of have two meanings to them, I was left guessing, and I've never really, in later movies, they cop to it a little bit more. And as he gets older, like Jesus did, he starts to realize, oh, I'm not just a kid.
Yeah.
But
I think it's very much kid-like behavior, but I think there's intention to it. Like when he is making the noise in the morning and his mom really is, he's driving her crazy.
Here's the thing.
That's like normal kid stuff.
Have you ever walked in on like a 4 or 5-year-old just playing alone and they're like fully talking to something?
Yeah.
Or acting, doing something really, or they come up to you and they start telling you a story and it's utterly bizarre and it doesn't make any sense.
But he's still in a 5-year-old's body with a 5-year-old's brain.
But that's the thing that this movie does so well, is when you're looking at Damien, there's half of you is going, I feel bad for this kid who's being placed into this evil, game that is countless thousands of years old, or fuck, I'm terrified of this kid because he is going to look at me and I'm going to catch fire or something.
Yeah.
And it's both. You feel both. It is so well done. The other sequence that deserves a shout out is the baboon, where it's only like a minute and a half long, but when the baboons go bananas and attack the car, the music, the way that the baboons first run away from them and then come back, they gather and then attack.
Yeah.
It just adds to this, what in the fuck is wrong with this kid? And are the baboons are trying, in that moment, they're trying to tear him to pieces because I guess baboons are good.
Let's not forget that prior to them even going through this driving part, the zoo warns to leave your windows up.
As they're driving
times.
through, the
You
woman's
hear
voice,
that throughout the
that's
visit
all
at the
she's
zoo.
saying is like, don't roll down your windows. Baboons are dangerous.
Yeah.
Don't roll down your windows. And you know, this movie, by the laws of the Omen, I'm just now realizing dogs are evil and baboons are good.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Interesting. So that's the movie itself. I want to ask you right now, because it's I think I've made it pretty clear how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Oh, I thought it was great.
Yay!
If it wasn't for the score, it would have been, a pretty average classic horror movie for me. The score transformed it into something artistic.
Way to go, Jerry Goldsmith.
And also,
who also
some of the
scored
shots,
Alien.
some of the frenetic shots of Robert in the cab at the beginning, and then driving to the hospital when Kathy's there, and driving, away to like get to the cemetery in the, wherever, like that. Some of those shots were amazing. How the storm came so quickly when the priest came to give his final warning to Robert, and then ultimately ran into a cemetery to try to survive but didn't.
Yeah.
And his impalement happened, which was a beautiful,
an incredible shot as well.
Killing.
Yeah. No,
there was no blood.
This movie is impeccable. It really is. It's so well done.
In Gregory Peckable.
I mean, that's the other thing. Gregory Peck is such a world-class actor.
Yeah.
The conflict in his face throughout the movie as he's confronted with these horrible things, with the weight of his own crimes, with everything, and then realizing at the end that he's just one man he's like, I'm the last hope in a battle between heaven and earth. Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
And he does his best. What's he supposed to do?
The consequence, though, it's the biggest consequence of the lie.
Don't lie to your wives.
But also
I
just
never
the deception, like taking a child, not even knowing if that child's mother actually died. No proof. No proof to know that your child was still
Anyone interested in the answers to those questions should see the first Omen, which goes deep into that.
Yeah, but it's like, and then they bring this baby to the mom, and it's just this happy family, and nobody even knows any
Listen,
better.
back in the 70s, you could just grab a baby. You want a baby, grab a baby.
In the 80s, too, lots of babies brought home, switched at birth.
You know what I really liked about growing up in the 80s was how much the parents at the time talked about protecting and saving children and could give less of a fuck about raising them. Yeah. That was fun.
So let's talk a little bit outside the movie.
Yes. Oh my goodness. This movie, look, I had always known about this stuff, but in researching for this episode, I learned the entirety of how fucked this production was.
Yeah.
Where do you even start?
Well, I'll start. So the film is well known for a series of tragic events that affected members of the crew and cast.
To the point where, I'll say this with recent experience, doing research on the production of this movie is very difficult because everything is written about these curses.
Yeah, and prior to and post production.
Oh, so, yeah, no, it followed.
I would say the saddest is prior to filming, Gregory Peck's son,
Jonathan,
sadly killed himself.
Yeah, he was only 31 years old. He was an author and an actor who he struggled with a lifetime illness, and I think his father said he had recently a love affair of his had ended, and he was very depressed. Gregory Peck was vacationing in France at the time and said throughout the rest of his life that it was his great regret that he was not in California because he knows his son would have called him first.
Yeah.
God, it's awful.
But he went on to go film this and hopped on a plane a couple of weeks later to London. And on that plane, on the way to start filming, the plane was struck by lightning. And Gregory Peck said that it was one of the scariest 5 minutes of his life.
Yeah. Now, we should say that this does occasionally happen in, air travel. That in itself is not weird. It's just,
In 1975, and when this movie was filmed, though, the mechanics of the plane and the protection of the plane from lightning strikes were very different than what they are now.
Oh no, they weren't flying the high quality uncrashable Boeings that we get to ride on today as lucky Americans.
Planes now can take lightning strikes
Yes.
a little bit harder.
However, the point I was trying to make is that the occurrence of lightning striking a plane is not in itself that strange or strange enough to be like, whoa. However, less than 2 weeks later, executive producer Mace Newfield's plane was also struck by lightning when en route to Los Angeles. Right after that, David Seltzer, the writer's plane, was hit by lightning while they were filming in Rome. And then, it was hit by lightning. And then while they were filming in Rome on the set, producer Harvey Bernard was narrowly missed by a bolt of lightning that almost hit him on the set. So, Lord, strike me down if you don't want me to make this movie. Oh, shit.
There was also an IRA bombing at the hotel that Richard Donner and another member of the crew.
IRA bombings. One bombing at the hotel Richard Donner was staying happened the day before he was there. Mm-hmm. And another bombing happened. Gregory Peck was going to go out to a local cafe and discovered he couldn't because just earlier it had been blown up by an IRA attack. So 2 people narrowly avoiding terrorist attacks.
This is the creepiest to me. This story is the creepiest. The special effects director from the film was filming another movie in the Netherlands after wrapping on The Omen. And he was in a car accident with his girlfriend.
Yes, this is special effects lead John Richardson. He was with his assistant, and I guess they were also dating, Liz Moore. She
was sadly decapitated. He survived.
Yeah, the accident was quite heinous. He lived, but a tire flying through the air from another vehicle decapitated Miss Moore.
And the claim is, and this is a town in the Netherlands, the claim is that the crash happened, and within eyeshot, there is a sign for the next town being named Omen, Omen, and it said 6.6 kilometers.
So the thing is,
that town actually does exist.
The town does exist. I'm not so sure about the 666 sign. That, like, what fucking distance is ever measured that way?
But that town,
that town is real.
Very near.
Oh, yes.
Where this accident happened.
Yeah.
So whether or not the kilometer marking was in fact a urban legend or an accurate remembrance, the fact that you're filming near a town named Omen after wrapping on a movie named Omen and something really tragic like a decapitation that happened in the movie you just filmed that you probably had a hand in the special effects of.
Oh, yeah. David Warner gets decapitated by a sheet of glass in this movie.
By a car.
Yeah. In a scene that this guy created and set up and oversaw.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
exactly.
It's just a little too...
It's fucking insane.
Coincidental to not have shivers run up your spine.
Now, if that were the end of it, that would be pretty nuts, right? No. Not even fucking close. Speaking of... horrible tragedies. So during the filming, they had chartered a plane to be used in one of the scenes. However, that scene got delayed, and they had to cancel the plane. They were going to rebook it at another time. So the day they were to film, that plane was booked by another group.
Right, and they had scheduling conflicts, right?
Yep. So the plane that was going to fly, the actors and whatnot,
and a lot of the crew
in the movie, was chartered by another group because scheduling conflicts pushed it aside, and that on that day crashed, killing everyone on board.
Yeah.
Woof.
Mm-hmm.
So, luckily that's the end of it. No, it isn't. Because remember the baboon scene we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, you might have noticed Lee Remick's acting in that was particularly authentic, and that is because the baboons actually went baboon shit and fucking freaked out and attacked the car. So Lee Remick screaming and going, "Oh my God," it's really Lee Remick going, "Oh my God,"
Yeah. They had a trainer, but for all those baboons, it's hard to kind of, once they get in their pack.
And once you, put the child of the devil in the car. So the other thing about that is one of the animal handlers involved in that scene was killed shortly after filming wrapped at the zoo. He was mauled to death by a tiger.
Yeah.
Oh. So a lot of people who
occupational hazard
even came near. That's the thing is, look, these are not necessarily
if this was
on
a
their own.
romantic comedy and all these things happened, it would be just like tragedy.
They're absolutely
after tragedy. But...
So this is where that comes in, because in subsequent Omen films, there were always stories of like, I looked at the clock and it said 666 on it, or this pizza. Literally, this is a story. Arkasha Stevens had a pizza on the set of First Omen, and the dimensions were 6 by 6 by 6. It's like, all right, you're working on an Omen movie. Everything looks like the fucking devil to you, right? If I was working on an Omen movie, I would be like, yeah, I'm seeing this shit everywhere, because you're thinking about it constantly. These stories have been have been both true and a part of urban legend for 50 years. And it's the power of suggestion. Plus, all these religious people are like, see, it's proof. I told you. Like, no, it's just
because
tragedy.
You made the movie and it's punishing you.
Now, that being said, when I first tried to watch this movie, I was with my very good friend Dana, who first introduced this boy to horror and turned me into the warped freak I am today. Thanks, Dana. We snuck this past my parents. Her parents were fine. My parents would not let us see this. We snuck a VHS. Remember those?
Yeah, of course.
Problem was, we didn't know this until we popped it in. The VHS was warped. Someone had left it out in the sun or something, and the magnetic tape inside was all warped. So when we popped it on, just a bunch of green, blue, and purple images came up, and the sound like came on, and we both screamed.
Yeah.
I might have been 12 or 13.
The cursed videotape.
We screamed, and then the two of us had the best time all night, like coming up with stories of how the devil had like taken that tape and made it so we couldn't watch. Like, we both knew it was ridiculous, and we both knew what a warped VHS was, and we watched it later. But we had so much fun the rest of that night. We didn't even watch the movie, just coming up with like stories of how we were cursed now.
Yeah.
So, and because when my parents were forbidding me from watching this movie, one of the things my mom said was, if this was, again, this is like 1993 maybe, so a long time before The Ring came out. My mom was like, if you watch this, you'll die.
Yeah.
If you watch this VHS, you'll be cursed and you'll die, and then you'll go to hell because it's a devil movie. So I was like, I want to see this movie more than any movie I've ever seen in my life.
Well, you are cursed, so it could be.
Yeah. Huh. I just thought it was my terrible personality. Oh, finally I have something to blame it on.
Sounds like you have maybe a potential spec script for the next VHS iteration.
Yeah, VHS Terror in Tandem. Love it. I can't wait to watch Beyond. I just started it. So that is some of the tragedy around this movie. And I am really not one to, and I still don't believe that there's any connection. But yes, this movie was certainly surrounded by a lot of fucked up stuff.
Yeah.
I think if, like you're saying, if this had been like, Notting Hill and a bunch of people died off it, it wouldn't carry the same sense of like, oh, this was meant to happen. It would just be like, well, this movie's cursed and it sucks. But you wouldn't think like that God or the devil had anything to do with it.
I mean, it's a series of really terrible tragedies that the connective tissue is
and there's
making this movie.
There's been a documentary about it. There's been a lot of, work and, supposition over the years. Gregory Peck and Harvey Stevens, who played Damien, they refused to talk about it. Harvey Stevens is still alive. He doesn't ever talk about it, but Gregory Peck would not discuss the hex around the film when it was brought up.
Especially losing his son and being in grief while you have to play someone in grief.
Just want to say,
and then having to kill your son
that's
the end of the film.
That definitely really
actors are not impervious to feelings.
Knowing that Gregory Peck had just lost his son who by suicide not long before that year, is now in a scene where he's physically holding a child down that is calling him daddy and begging him for mercy, and he's going to stab him. That must have been something for the man himself to deal with. I want to give a little love to Gregory Peck, because first off, he's one of my favorite actors of all time. He's just a tremendous screen presence. And really that like classic, when I think of like men, like masculine.
Just think of Atticus Finch.
Yes, exactly. He had the ability to play thoughtful and considerate and vulnerable, just as well as swaggering, chewing on a toothpick.
Yeah.
Like, the guy was amazing. So he later, a few years after this, teamed up with Frank Sinatra and dedicated the rest of his life to humanitarian work, which he never, received any money for. Like, he really did a lot of good things, which unfortunately, tragedy in our lives does seem to be the catalyst for that. But I guess that's the best we can do is try to do something positive with the pain we feel. But Gregory Peck does seem like he was a pretty classy dude in a lot of respects. I'm sure he had his problems, and I'm sure anyone listening to this now is like pulling up articles of that time he did something bad, but whatever.
Yeah. Well,
that's The Omen. I'm so glad you chose this one. I'm so happy you had never seen it before, because it's a real treat. I just sort of take it for granted sometimes that I'm like, everyone's seen this, right?
It's a perfect movie to watch in October.
Oh, it really is. Because a lot of the movie takes place in the fall. They're all wearing coats.
And it takes place in London.
Yeah.
So London is like perpetually in the fall.
It feels so good. And it is a movie you can show to your like snootier friends as elevated horror.
And it's also, I would say, although scary and religious themes are hard to explain, it's not bloody.
No, it's nowhere near The Exorcist in terms of like pure nightmare fuel.
Yeah, or like goo.
Yeah, or crosses and vages.
Yeah, and swearing.
Yeah.
But yeah, The Omen, the first installment in our new classic horror.
Oh, hope you liked it,
series.
Everybody. And even if you didn't, we're probably going to do it again.
We are. I just said it's the first installment in our new classic horror series.
Terror in Tandem presents a Terror in Tandem production deep dive movie by Terror in Tandem.
If you made it past all that, thanks for listening.
Bye, everyone.
See you next time.
Terror in Tandem is written, produced, and recorded by Laura and Richard Mathiasen, and edited and mixed by Richard Mathiasen. Our theme was written and performed by Carrie Denver, and all other music was written and performed by David Sispanik. All opinions expressed on this podcast are our own and should be taken as such. Thanks for listening, and please remember to give us a like, a review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. We're standing right behind you.